So, the remaster to Lord of the Rings War in the North just shadow dropped, and now you're curious whether it's worth the $20 or not. Well, I got you covered. The Lord of the Rings War in the North is a game that has a somewhat infamous legacy, as after launching to pretty middling reception, Warner Bros. Ran into some licensing issues, and as such the game disappeared from storefronts everywhere, meaning it's one of those titles that most people literally haven't been able to play since 2019. Until today. Now, for those who missed out on the 2011 release and you have no idea what this game is about, well, in War in the North you aren't playing as Aragorn, Legolas, or Gimli. No, you play as Middle-earth's Northern B-Team, that being Eredan the Ranger, Andriel the Elf, and Farron the Dwarf. In a nutshell, War in the North is a linear, M-rated hack-and-slash RPG light where your job is to hold the line against Agendor's forces up north while the main fellowship gets all the glory down south. Now, one thing you have to know about the original game is that it is notorious for having some of the worst AI ever in video game history. But in the remaster, Aspyr actually addressed this by adding real-time character hot swapping. You can now switch characters on the fly, and finally take control of any character to assign gear and skill points for your computer-controlled allies. Essentially, it changes the dynamic of the solo experience for the positive. Aspyr also added a lock-on targeting system and bumped the performance up to 60 frames per second, which takes a lot of headache out of juggling multiple enemies. So, the quality of life updates are pretty good. But how does a 15-year-old co-op brawler actually hold up if you strip away all the nostalgia? Well, once you get past the menus and actually start interacting with the world, the game immediately smacks you in the face with a very specific old-school RPG feeling. That is to say, even though this is absolutely an action-oriented game, the dialogue sections have a surprising amount of structure to them. For example, you get these sparse but deliberate roleplay moments where you can pick between dialogue choices that offer unique responses. And well, the rhythm of these conversations strongly channels Golden Era BioWare, specifically Dragon Age Origins with how the dialogue trees are laid out.
What is this Athalis the rhyme speaks of?
An herb, commonly known as kingsfoil. It has little medicinal use, though some find it comforting for headaches and other small complaints.
Perhaps there is more virtue in Athalis than you know. Have you any of this herb?
Now, on the audio side, I have to give a quick public service announcement here. The moment you start the game, go into the settings and turn the music volume way down, as the orchestral score is fine, but the audio mixing is pretty aggressive and it will heavily overpower the dialogue if you leave it on default. And the thing is, you actually want to hear this voice cast, especially if you're a fan of Critical Role, for example, because your ears are going to perk up immediately. Hearing Laura Bailey and Liam O'Brien in these roles is a fun little surprise, and listening to their performances brought me back to simpler days when gaming wasn't as divisive as it is today.
Allow me to introduce my companions, Eredan of the Dunedain and Farron of Erebor. I present to you Eladan and Elrohir, the sons of Elrond Half-Elven.
It is a pleasure to make the acquaintance of such skilled and courageous warriors. Was it the three of you then who freed the Great Eagle?
That said, the narrative, well, it exists. The story feels incredibly fanfiction-y, largely because you spend a good chunk of the early game running into cinematic legends like Gandalf, Aragorn, Elrond, and Bilbo. Meeting the main Fellowship members in Rivendell or Bree is just a weird-ass trip, mainly because none of the original film actors reprised their roles, and so the voice acting for these legendary characters comes off feeling pretty cheesy. It constantly reminds you that you're controlling the budget trio while the real heroes are off handling the actual plot.
What brought you on such a long and perilous journey?
Unpleasant business. My father sent me to report the escape of Gollum, a creature Aragorn had entrusted to our care.
However, you don't play War in the North for the plot, you play it to hit things. That is to say, when the combat in War in the North actually clicks, it feels really smooth. Building up a hit chain combo and triggering a heavy execution animation comes with a pretty satisfying audio effect. Climbing onto a cave troll's back to deliver a finishing blow still looks brutal, and unlocking dual wielding for Andriel gives you a serious power spike. Plus, calling in Bellerim the Great Eagle to drop from the sky and obliterate your enemies remains cool as hell. The problem with the combat though is that you're constantly fighting against game design from the early 2010s. The hitboxes can be genuinely infuriating. Enemies will regularly land melee strikes on you when you are clearly standing out of their physical reach, and there is no animation cancelling whatsoever. This means that if you lock into a long finisher on an ordinary orc, you have to sit there and eat every incoming hit from a boss like Tharzog because the game refuses to let you break away and dodge. Then there's the camera. As much as I appreciate the addition of a lock-on feature, during fights against bigger opponents, the camera locks onto every single little animation the boss makes, whipping around violently and making it way harder to keep your positioning than it needs to be. The jank is pretty evident in the movement and the UI as well. The inventory system feels really aged, and because the item icons all blur together, it's way too easy to accidentally sell off your main armor piece to a merchant. You also cannot jump over basic ledges, and the sprint function feels like a slightly faster jog that the game doesn't even bother explaining on a controller layout. You basically have to discover it from a loading screen tip.
Oh my god, bro.
Essentially, it's a mix of genuinely fun gameplay mixed with some really heavy jank. Even with the new hot swap system giving you direct control over the Fellowship from Wish, you cannot entirely escape the fact that the companion AI is still pretty terrible. If you are playing solo, get ready to do some serious babysitting, because your teammates will routinely stand out in the open eating attacks from bosses, charge headfirst into exploding goblins, or literally block narrow paths so you can't roll out of danger. There were plenty of moments during my playthrough where my companions kept getting downed in a room packed with mobs, forcing me to kite enemies in circles just to revive them. On the good side though, that's where the new character swapping becomes a lifesaver, because when the AI inevitably drops the ball, being able to instantly swap over to the dwarf and pop his healing war cry is often the only thing keeping your party from a total wipe. That said, managing gear across 3 separate characters while playing solo gets tedious pretty fast. Navigating the menus to pass off weapons, armor, and accessories to your AI companions feels clunky, and it slows the pacing down significantly. At the end of the day, all of this just reinforces what War in the North was always meant to be: a co-op game. Playing with 2 actual human friends will bypass almost all of these headaches and make the campaign infinitely more enjoyable. So, where does that leave us? Well, at $20, the price of admission here is pretty fair, I'd say. It isn't trying to be a full-price AAA release, and as long as you set your expectations accordingly, there is still plenty to enjoy. If you've been longing for a return to Middle-earth, or you're just hungering for an old-school hack-and-slash where you get drenched in orc blood with a couple of friends, this remaster delivers on that very specific itch. That said, if you're flying purely solo and you're looking for a tight, polished action game by modern standards, you might find the jank a little bit too punishing, and in that case I'd honestly suggest you just grab the Shadow of Mordor games instead, because they offer a much smoother single-player experience overall. But as a weekend co-op brawler to play through with your friends, War in the North is a fun, bloody little romp that serves as a cool little time capsule. It's janky, it's flawed, but at the end of the day, it's just good old-fashioned fun. So, my suggestion is go check it out on Steam if you're able, try it out for an hour, and if you don't like it, you can always ask for a refund. Thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Alton, signing off.